Good Monday, makers. Welcome back to another episode of Maker Pipe Monday. My name is Dave. This is a special throwback episode. I can't believe it. It's been 5 years since we launched our Kickstarter, started Maker Pipe, and we've got some builds that were featured in that video. The first one we've got is this wonderful bike cart that we built for the video. We wanted to feature builds that were unique challenges, unique problems to solve. And this was one of them that we thought Maker Pipe would be especially good for. And it was a challenge because we only have T connectors. That's the only connector we had made before the Kickstarter, and they were just prototypes. And we were making things and then taking them apart and building something else. It was wild because we only had like 48 of these T connectors that we made. But this is one of the builds that we made. It was a bike cart using mountain bike wheels, and then we attached it to Kelly's bike. And there were a couple of unique challenges to this. One was, how are we going to mount the bicycle wheels to the cart itself? And then how are we going to attach it to another bike? So we used 3D printing a lot in this, and you can see to attach the wheels, and these are straight off my mountain bike that we took the wheels off. We made these 3D printed brackets that kind of sandwiched around a piece of conduit, and they held the bike. And then over here on Kelly's bike, we used, let me zoom into that. We used another 3D printed bracket that went onto the axle of that bike, a little tab to hold it in place. And then we used rubber to be the flexible attachment because you want the cart and the bike to move independently, but also be attached. And this piece of rubber elastomer was a great solution. I would do that again today if I built this all over again. We put it into the tube, cross pinned it, and then we had this cotter pin right there and pinned it to the bike, but it was also removable. So there's a couple pictures of it being built. There's prototyping of the actual wheels. And we've sent this file out a dozen times. I mean, we have shared this, people have replicated it. There's a detailed look at it. And if anyone wants that, if they want to machine it or 3D print it themselves, just hit us up and we'll be glad to share it. In fact, I think it's on this community post right here down at the bottom. There are the files that you can do that yourself. But it worked pretty good, although we never really used it too much. It was mostly for filming, but we did have a chance to use it a little bit. Let me show you that. This was our friend Malone. We recruited her to do a little bit of a demo and riding around with the cart all set up. And this is a clip from the Kickstarter. There's Malone. Really appreciate that help, Malone. And she was riding around the warehouse. That was Synergy Mill, the makerspace local to us. And we had all the blow up inflatables and skimboards and all kinds of different things laden down in the cart, and it did pretty good. I was pretty happy. Another great build we did was with my brother-in-law, John Carter. Maker Pipe's always been about family and community, so it was great to work with John on this build. He was a home brewer, and he loved making his own beer. In fact, he made beer for Kelly and I's wedding, which was a super special treat. But he wanted to make a more advanced setup for his home brewing, and this is what he came up with, which was really special. Of course, he used conduit and maker pipe for the frame, and then he outfitted it with these 3 huge kettles, stainless steel kettles, all with their gauges and everything. And then he put burners underneath that to brew in the brewing process. All were attached to propane. You can see kind of the pipe running down there and off to the propane tank. And they did a great job. They were big. I mean, they were really substantial, threw a lot of heat. And then he had this cool transfer pump down here that was an electric pump, and he can move liquid from one to the next. So a lot of home brewers, they use gravity, but he wanted to use that electric pump so he could move the liquid from one to another as he saw fit. Really cool build. And then he used some red wrap. And also, I like this. This was a cool detail. He had his spoon that he used for stirring the mash right there and a hook on there. That was a neat detail. And I went to help him build the frame one day. That was a fun day, and see it come to life, figure out where the burners were going to be. And here's a little clip from the Kickstarter video, showed off the build, and then gave a cheers, which was very appropriate for a homebrew setup. But yeah, thanks, John. That was really cool. Appreciate you being part of our Kickstarter 5 years ago. Meg, John's wife, and my sister-in-law and Kelly's sister also made a debut. She's a great artist, great at painting, and she has this cool technique that she does sea glass, how to paint sea glass. So we captured that for the Kickstarter and created this whole GoPro camera surround to film that. I guess I didn't really think about, I mean, who needs that many cameras, I thought, but we were trying to demonstrate the concept. But now I understand filming these videos. I certainly understand now. We had the overhead shot, but look at that. There was one, two, three, four, five, six GoPros all together, plus this camera slider in the front that we created. This was a neat build, and this camera slider was a lot of cool kind of figuring out and tinkering to get that working. It was powered with a stepper motor, Arduino. Here's me kind of prototyping it, but I used these 3D printed parts that were off of the MP CNC. That's a router, mostly printed CNC that uses electrical conduit. So I used their parts and adapted that for this camera slider. It worked pretty good. It was a little bit bumpy because we were using just these skate bearings as the rollers. They weren't as smooth as they could be. But then we did all the logic with the Arduino and the stepper motor. It was a cool project. I love doing that motion and figuring out those things. So hopefully we can do more of that in the future. That was a really cool build. Thanks again for Meg too for the help in the Kickstarter video. Meg also, she played Cannonball Run with me in the Kickstarter video. That's what this is here. This was a fun game that we made for the Kickstarter video, but also the Maker Fairs. This thing traveled all over the country as we went around Maker Fairs trying to get interest for MakerPipe and our Kickstarter. The whole idea with this was two people would play and they'd drop these cannonballs, which were really just playground balls, and they'd go back and forth, and then whoever hit the buttons at the end, at the bottom, would put up their light. So we brought this all around and had a blast watching people play, and we played a bunch too. It was good for makers of all ages. There's some young makers in Washington, D.C. at the Maker Faire that were really enjoying it. Here's one that of just like prototyping the idea as we were figuring out how to make this in our garage. We were testing out some concepts, also using the electronics and trying to figure out how to do the lights and do the logic. That was a lot of fun. But there's another person trying it out at one of the Maker Fairs. Mostly young makers, also adults really liked it. And here's a clip that Andy's Tech Garage posted. This was at the New York Maker Faire, and Andy's Tech Garage is a great educational kids maker channel that you got to check out, but they had a good time with it as well. But all those builds were super fun to do. I can't believe it's been 5 years, and the whole reason we're looking back is because we're running a pre-order for our next size up, the MakerPipe Pro connectors that work with 1-inch EMT after 5 years, and pre-orders are available for that if you're interested. Check those out. And if you like these videos, if you want to see more creative things made out of EMT conduit, definitely consider subscribing. We love having you every week, and we'll see you next time. So long.